Hey guys, and welcome to the channel. So last night, the 24th of March 2020, I was part of an international webinar to discuss the effects of COVID-19 virus on various beauty markets. Obviously, I was representing Japan, so in today's video, I'm going to show you the presentation that I gave. If it is interesting to you, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about the effects of the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic on the Japanese beauty market. My name is Robert McGuinness. I'm CEO and founder of Knect Japan. We are import and distribution specialists. While it's still unknown how many actual infections Japan has and how much real danger the COVID-19 coronavirus poses, there are observable impacts both on the economy and within the beauty industry. Currently, Japan has not declared the COVID-19 pandemic a national emergency. The government has not made any serious restrictions, only advisory cautions, nor have they made any changes to importing or exporting. So the impact on the beauty market is likely to be less than in other markets. During my presentation, I'll discuss some of the broad issues around the current pandemic, as well as some of the main impacts within the beauty market. The Japanese economy and beauty market are very large, so anything big enough to impact this economy will inevitably have global ramifications. According to the image on the left, the Kanto area, which is where Tokyo is located, has an economy equivalent to Brazil. Looking at the middle image, you can see just how significant this is. Beauty sales in Brazil are just behind Japan, even though they have almost twice the population. What this suggests is that Japanese consumers spend a lot on beauty products. The graph with the circles on it shows the spending power of Japanese consumers more clearly. This is a GDP graph, and what it shows is that even though Japan is the third biggest economy, average wealth is very large. So changes in Japanese consumer habits are significant not just on the Japanese economy, but also on the global economy. For simplicity, I've broken the impacts of COVID-19 into four major categories. The first is that sales have dropped significantly. The second is that customer habits have changed. The third is that retail landscapes have adapted to these changes. And finally, online sales are rather predictably increasing. In terms of manufacturing and supply, most Japanese brands are not reporting issues. This is largely due to the fact that they source ingredients and manufacturing from within Japan. What we are seeing is that sales are being impacted far more significantly than supply, manufacturing, logistics, and other areas. However, just because Japanese brands are not reporting much impact from the pandemic, it does not necessarily mean that there are none. In fact, many people have been skeptical that this has been an attempt to ensure that the 2020 Olympic Games moved ahead as planned. They have now, of course, been officially postponed. Let's look at some Japanese brands and their perspective on the pandemic. Shiseido, Polar, Bluebell, and Mash Beauty Lab are all reporting no effect from the COVID-19 within Japan. Shiseido did report a 55% drop in sales in China during the week of January 24th to the 30th. They started the year in China with a 47% increase in sales from the 1st of January to the 23rd. Towards the end of February, Shiseido announced that they would support people affected by the COVID-19 outbreak through an initiative they call Relay of Love Project, which is funded by 1% of sales from Asian markets. Shiseido has also decided to suspend marketing activities for the next 3 months, but they do not expect any long-term negative impact from the crisis. In fact, they have said that they plan to strengthen their e-commerce channels and marketing activities when this situation recovers. So essentially they see this as an opportunity to overhaul their practices and intend to come out of this crisis stronger. On the other hand, Corsair Corporation are reporting lower sales and have lowered their sales projections, operating profits, and their net income projections accordingly. It's no real surprise that consumer spending is lower at the moment. On March 19, Kyoto newspaper reported that 86% of the retailers that they surveyed claimed to have been negatively affected by the pandemic. Of those 86%, a further 69% claimed that sales are lower, and around 61% of events in Japan, such as trade shows and meetings, have reportedly been cancelled. 52% of manufacturing and logistics companies also claim that in the past week they've experienced negative impacts as a direct result of the virus. J-Front Retailing, who own Daimaru Department Store, said that general sales in February went down by 21.4%, while duty-free dropped by 75%. Daimaru also reported that the number of customers went down by 74% and that sales per person went down by 3%. The year began well for retailers in Japan, with sales up 106.8% from the previous year. However, as the pandemic developed, general sales dropped dramatically and are now somewhere around 50% of sales from the same time in 2019. In the beauty market, we are seeing customers' habits change, not only in the way they buy, but also in what they buy and who is buying. Japanese people are no strangers to masks, particularly during winter, which is flu season, and spring, which is hay fever season. Pollen numbers are exceptionally high in the Tokyo region due to the surrounding cedar forests. But this year, almost everybody is wearing a mask almost all of the time as a direct response to the crisis. We did, of course, see a surge in people buying surgical masks as panic increased several weeks ago, which resulted in a shortage and a black market supply of masks and hand sanitizer. This situation seems to be more or less under control now, possibly because Japan has not yet seen the same level of panic or imposed isolation as some other countries. However, this may change in the very near future. Consumers are still buying products, but the focus is on items that enhance visual features that are not hidden by face masks. Beauty regimens and online advice often revolve around these points. For brands that are already in this market, what this means is, of course, the best strategy right now is to focus on sales of those items. However, in the long term, these trends should play no significant role in decision making. So if you're not in this market yet, such considerations should have a very minimal impact on your market entry strategy. Shoppers in their 20s are tech savvy and don't mind buying online. So for interest, let's look at some characteristics of this demographic. For women in their 20s, Orbis, which is a Polar brand, is the most popular skincare brand. Polar is a network marketing brand and Orbis is their in-store brand. What we're looking at here is 2 separate weeks of top-ranking product sales at a store called At Cosme, which is a significant supplier of product to the Japanese market. And essentially what these figures show us is that there is a decrease in sales of products that enhance lips and other unseen features hidden by masks. So for categories like lipsticks and foundations, sales are tending to go down at the moment. And there is a generally high level of interest in products that focus on eyes and skincare. As expected, there are fewer people going into stores at the moment. We're also seeing a big fall in tourism, which we mentioned earlier, which has led to a 75% decrease in duty-free sales, and this is quite significant. Sales are, of course, shifting online as people are scared to leave their homes, and retailers are trying solutions like live streaming to drive sales online. There are several apps that people can use for this, but most live streams are on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Live streams that suggest how to apply product in order to enhance the areas of the face that are visible while wearing masks are very popular. The recently opened flagship store for At Cosme in Harajuku actually has a live streaming booth facing into the street to mix online and offline in a very unique way. This also means that trends are shifting by age groups as the older generations are less comfortable with online shopping. So products aimed at the younger, online, social media friendly generations are doing better than brands and categories that older generations are buying. In response to these conditions, physical stores are opening later and closing earlier. However, it might be true that this is less of a direct impact of the virus itself and more in response to lower sales and therefore lower profits. Schools have been closed partly due to the pandemic and also because it's spring break here in Japan. Interestingly, this did lead to larger groups of teenagers hanging around shopping areas, which is likely to have boosted sales in products aimed at younger generations, although we didn't find any specific data to support that theory. Due to fear of spreading the virus, brands that usually apply makeup in store are no longer doing that, and public samples are not being offered at this time. This obviously makes it more challenging for brands to attract interest in new product ranges, and for market entry brands, this presents a challenge as physical touchpoints are very important. Although this is anticipated to be a short-term problem, and stores are expected to return to normal practice reasonably soon. A possible solution to this, of course, is to provide samples such as sachets that customers can take home rather than use in store. So, if you're not already in this market, it's possible that this really should be of no real concern. Future impacts are predicted to be in areas such as the creation of new product ranges, seasonal colours, and so on. This is partly due to anticipated impacts on global supply chains, on packaging and wrapping products, and things like that. But largely, this is due to the fact that decision makers are less able to be in the same physical location. So changes to the workplace, such as remote working, are impacting on this situation in Japan. If manufacturing is interrupted, it's predicted that autumn and winter lines for 2020 will also face issues and that maintaining volumes might be challenging, but things are expected to be back to normal for 2021 releases. I suppose we won't know the full extent of the impact until later in the year. According to the Japanese Cosmetic Industry Association, the Japanese government, and Japanese customs, there are no impacts to regulatory compliance or import procedures due to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. Cosmetic products intended for use in this market must, of course, be compliant, registered, and appropriately labelled by a licensed Japanese company, as was, of course, the case before the pandemic. In general, the procedure for compliance is that all formulations must be assessed. This is done in a similar way to many other countries where ingredients are compared to negative and positive lists. However, there are some unique aspects here in Japan. Secondly, the factory and brand must be registered as suppliers of product into the territory. Thirdly, every SKU must be registered. This is done in person with the Japanese government after the necessary paperwork is completed. Fourthly, appropriate Japanese labels must be applied before product is sold. And finally, all imports must be approved and inspected by an appropriately licensed Japanese import company. By the way, cosmetics are seen as products that have no efficacy. Anything that includes ingredients known to have medical properties or products that claim to have actual effects are not classed as cosmetic and must therefore be registered as quasi-drugs or drugs. The registration process for quasi-drugs and drugs is similar to cosmetics, but it's more stringent and takes longer. This is an example of an appropriate label for the Japanese territory and the information that is legally required to be on the label. On the right side is an example of a label that's been correctly applied to product for sale in the Japanese market. Finally, let's talk about some opportunities. These graphs were made before the pandemic, however, they're still useful in showing the basic trends of the Japanese market. Skincare and makeup present the biggest opportunities. The main sales channels for beauty brands is by far through drugstore channels. However, online sales were very strong here before the pandemic and are, of course, being strengthened at the moment. And this would seem to present the biggest opportunities for brands. Listing online in Japan is not particularly difficult if your SKUs are registered. As I suggested earlier, the general attitude in Japan is that things will improve soon, although it's unlikely that things will ever go back to the way they were exactly. It's most likely that the online trend will only continue to grow as it presents consumers and brands with unparalleled opportunities. The bigger challenge, as we see it, is in the marketing and brand awareness. That's all I have for this presentation. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please write them in the comments or send me an email.